Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, right here from the farm, and we're delighted you're here. 2 hours today, special broadcast with Dr. Millie Hinkle, N.D. And we're going to be talking about some very interesting topics. I suggest you don't touch that dial. For example, electromagnetic illness. That's something that's brand new to me. I haven't heard that term. EMI. We'll be talking about Zika and the effects of spraying insecticides to combat Zika. We'll be talking about CPAP use. I've noticed that it's increasing. And we'll be talking about Camel Milk, autism, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, Crohn's, Parkinson's, and food allergies. I'm delighted to be broadcasting again for a couple hours with Dr. Millie Hinkle. Welcome, Dr. Hinkle.
Good morning. Well, I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's been a little while, but I noticed on your website that you list that you were broadcasting with us, and I'm glad. You called me a couple days ago, and you said that your phone is ringing. What's that all about?
I've had over 150 calls, 157 to be exact, in the last few weeks, and emails from parents just frantic, where they're spraying for the Zika virus that have autistic children. These children have started having seizures. They've got rashes covering their bodies. Some of them are biting themselves. Two of the children were banging their heads against a wall so badly they had to be put in restraints. This only started with the spraying of the Zika virus in the areas where these children live. It has been just unbelievable. We're so worried about these children's health and trying to get on top of this, and there's not a lot that can be done. We can give them homeopathics for those exact pesticides and insecticides being sprayed. For people who don't understand homeopathics, it's basically taking something and diluting it thousands and thousands of times, and the body tends to, when a few drops of that help the body deal with it. But this is a very serious problem that's going on. And,
class, if you'd like to follow along with us, if you'd like to go to Dr. Hinkle's website, CamelMilkUSA.com, CamelMilk USA.com. So you're very concerned about Zika, but more concerned, I guess, about the effects of the insecticides. Is that correct? I
am so much more concerned about the effects of the insecticides in Zika. Just in Florida alone, they've found 56 people that have been infected with Zika. How many of those were pregnant women, I'm not sure. But what they've done is exposed 20.6 million people to heavy spraying of insecticide naiad. And that is much more toxic. It causes neurological problems. It develops neurotoxins. It has long-term side effects on the body, scientists say. It can affect not only humans, but also insects, other insects such as honeybees. And Florida is a very large agricultural state. Just a few days ago, 2.5 million honeybees were killed in one swoop in South Carolina from spraying for the Zika virus. What an impact that would have on the crops. And it's not just honeybees, it's butterflies, it's other things. And I've noticed even where I am in North Carolina, we've had a reduction of butterflies and bees and things this summer because they're spraying everywhere. The side effects of this spraying is cancer, birth defects, the same symptoms that you're going to get, neurotoxins and neurological birth defects from this. And the thing I think that has me worried is the CDC, Center for Disease Control officials, continue to tell pregnant women to spray their body every time they go out with an insecticide. And some of the insecticides that they recommend cause birth defects. I am just astounded at some of the stuff. And one of the things in the literature for the CDC that they warn against, they warn people not to use a natural insect repellent, which I wonder who's funding all this.
Yeah, I wonder if Zika, this is my question. I wonder if Zika was man-made and for the benefit of the insecticide companies. I wonder
Industry.
Yeah.
Well, you know, some of the most powerful lobbyists in Washington are insecticide companies. So that gives me a real, pause to think about what that means. And, I think everyone knows you spray for an insecticide. Just think of a cockroach and you use an insecticide. They become resilient to it, and then you've got to use a more serious one, a more dangerous one, a more dangerous one, and they just keep mutating. So what's going to happen to these insects, like the mosquito? It's just going to mutate into something different, and then are you going to have to now use even more lethal insecticides to kill that mosquito and that whatever virus or whatever it is going to be? I don't see an end to this, and I don't know how, unless someone takes serious action, it can be, addressed, especially with our government.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking as you were saying this about some of our friends who have been called to serve in the Middle East. They volunteered. I don't know why they did it, but they did. And then I remember getting requests in our village in Virginia for flea collars. And parents of the men who were fighting this conflict in the Middle East were asking for flea collars for their sons so they could wear them around their ankles. Dog and cat flea collars to be worn around the ankles to kill the fleas. And then I'm thinking, there's warnings about the dangers of handling those things, and so they're going to wear these against their skin. And then I was thinking about a couple of our German shepherds that are no longer with us, and the veterinarians would recommend that we use one of these chemical applications between their shoulder blades, their front legs, their shoulders and their front legs, and apply it, and it'll kill fleas and ticks for 30 days, and then you just reapply it. Well, after several years of doing this, one of our German shepherds became incontinent. And the other one, the rear legs would not work. And literally, so these shepherds were the same age, and around the same time, within a couple months of each other, they developed serious symptoms, so serious that they had to be put down because they had larvae. They couldn't move.
Yes.
So if we're thinking that these insecticides are, they only kill bugs, that's not true. They have dramatic impacts on us. And
they have dramatic impact, even at a low dosage, the studies say. And, I remember several years back, I was in Arizona working with patients, and there was a study because there were epidemic proportions in women and men golfers of breast and prostate cancer, and it was directly, at the end of the study, directly attributed to the insecticides and pesticides and fungicides and herbicides used on golf courses. So if people think that they're going to be free from all this, I would like to see, if this is continuing to be used, we're going to see an increase of cancer in those areas. And we're certainly going to see an increase of neurological symptoms. And it goes as far as dementia, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, seizures, and it affects your heart. So a lot of heart problems are going to arise because this is a lethal, and it's banned, by the way. It's banned in Europe, Vincent. Mm-hmm. This insecticide they're spraying for the Zika virus is banned in other countries. What does this say?
You know, you mentioned
it's a scary thing.
You mentioned golf courses, and I remember when developments and housing developments were being built. They would use it's next to a golf course, or the golf course is in the middle, or the golf course is adjacent to this development, and this was allegedly a good thing. However, what you're talking about is the insecticides, the chemical sprays on the grass. When it rains, runs downhill. It runs downhill and it contaminates those properties. So living adjacent to a golf course is a bad thing. It's a really bad thing from a health perspective. And I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's something that is very seldom talked about.
It is, and I cannot tell you how many patients over the years I have seen that have developed serious environmental allergies and seizures and symptoms of neurological symptoms who actually had homes on golf courses. And you know, something that was found out about a year ago that astounded me is that some of the new homes being built in the Southwest now have little systems of tubes going throughout the walls of the home where insecticides are misted every so often into those walls, and you just refill the machine with insecticides, and as long as you live there, you're being misted with insecticides. It is astounding to me how people think that this is not harmful. And the EPA and FDA say that there's just no negative side effects from this to speak of, and that in low doses it should be fine. Well, how low is the dose and how often are you being exposed would be my question. And if it can kill all of these other animals, and in fact, we talk to people who have horses and people who have goats, and where they have been spraying in Florida near their farmland, they are having a tremendous amount. They've never, ever had mutations in newborn animals on their farm. Now they're seeing that with 3 legs, etc.
Bats with 3 legs?
Goats with 3 legs.
Goats with 3 legs. Well, I've got another dot we can connect when we come back about a birth defect right down the road from us, 40 miles down the road, Rogersville, Missouri. We'll be right back. Dr. Millie Hinkle, CamelMilkUSA.com. That's Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us, and wow. During the break, I did a search on birth defects in cows and calves, and I found one, a calf born with 5 mouths in India. I'm looking at another one with 5 legs, 2 coming out of the same shoulder. I found another one on the internet, images of 7 legs. It looks like a black lab with 7 legs. You know, a calf. Here's another calf with four normal legs and 1 leg coming out of its neck. And down the road from us, here's a calf with 2 faces, 2 twisted faces. Think of, twisting your fingers together, and if each finger were a face, that's what this calf looks like. I'll post some of these images on the website during the next break. But in Rogersville, about 40 miles down the road from us, Rogersville, Missouri, there was a calf born within the last year and a half or so with 4 legs and 1 hoof coming out of its face. So we're seeing more and more of these birth defects, and it's not just frogs, and it's not just lambs, it's all kinds of animals, including humans. And so where is this coming from? Well, Dr. Hinkle, what do you think? Is it everything?
I think it's coming from the insecticide spraying and the overuse of insecticides, not just with this Zika, but I think that there's too much insecticides being used in the United States for so many reasons, from spraying of lawns to homes to crops, etc. You know, Vincent, there was a study done just 2 years ago in California, conducted by one of the major universities there, and they looked at 970, almost 1,000, autistic children. And those children's mothers had been exposed to the exact insecticide that they're spraying for the Zika virus now. And there was shown an 87% increase in autism among mothers who had been exposed to this in the areas where they lived. So that's a pretty scary thing. If you think you may have a few children born with defects from the Zika virus, the thousands and thousands that I'm afraid are going to be born with other neurological and or physical defects are going to far outweigh that, in my opinion. And it's based on years of studying and looking at this and seeing what's been done around the world. If you go to look at some of the children that were born in Vietnam after the spraying of Agent Orange, it's one of the saddest stories in history when you look at these children that were deformed, that were retarded, where Agent Orange had been sprayed. It was terrible of these expectant mothers when they gave birth to these children. It's the same thing we're doing now. We're spraying a tremendous amount of insecticides for a small amount of cases that have been found. And I fear for the future of a lot of these children, and I don't know how we're going to be able to go back and try to do the damage that's being done to these autistic children that are already autistic with neurological symptoms, and how we're going to be able to fix or try to get that stabilized. I don't know how we're going to do it.
I mentioned on the air a few days ago that Dow Chemical is in Midland, Michigan. And on the other side of the city of Midland, Michigan, is a hospital. And it seems to me reasonable that this hospital was created with the help of Dow, and that one of the reasons that it was built was to deal with the effects of the damage that was caused by the processing and whatever Dow Chemical was doing, and also to cover it up. Do you think that there are cover-ups involved in the medical community, the medical industry, with relations to these chemical companies?
Oh, I'm sure there are. I obviously don't know personally of any, but of course, I mean, there are a lot of these hospitals get funded by these big companies, and what would be the reason? Look at the high cancer rates many years back in West Virginia, and I remember going into Charleston, visiting, and just my eyes and nose burning, and just thinking these people are inhaling this every day. Now, a tremendous amount of that has been cleaned up, but there are other places around the country that, people think Hawaii is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Well, of all the states in the United States, and this is documented, Hawaii
hold that thought.
has the most insecticides.
Hold that thought. That's Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us. And as we were leaving the previous segment, Dr. Hinkle, you were talking about beautiful Hawaii. Please continue.
Oh, I was. One of the sad things is when you do research, you find out the state that has the most use of insecticides is Hawaii, which is sad because they have a lot of the companies like Monsanto and companies like that have developed these GMO products and plant seeds and things. And so that's a lot of that research is done on the island of Hawaii. And so they use more insecticides than any other place in the entire United States, which I think is sad because you think of Hawaii as being paradise and you don't think of it as being such a pesticided place. And it's really sad that is happening in those beautiful areas. And we're doing this all over the United States. I don't think that people, if someone else says to me it's only Roundup, I think I'm going to clobber them. I hear that all the time, but then I see people who come to me that have been poisoned with, I see patients in the summer, especially men, who come to me with severe gastrointestinal problems, and they can't relate, and rashes. And when I say, have you been spraying, I test them, and they load you with things like Roundup, and that is exactly what shows up. And once we detox them from it, get it out of their bodies, all their symptoms go away. It's the same thing. It's too much use of insecticides, pesticides, chemicals like that in our environment.
Dr. Hinkle, can you tell us what some of the symptoms of Roundup poisoning are? You know,
well, for the patients who come into my office, they have rashes on their hands and arms and other places in their body. They have some mental confusion, and sometimes it can be personality changes, such as being a little bit aggressive. They can say, I can't sleep anymore, I have insomnia. One of the main problems is gastrointestinal. They think they have an ulcer, or they have, a burning, they can't eat, they're nauseous, and it truly is, it goes back to insecticides they've been using on their gardens or in their yards. And I do caution people about it in the summer, and we certainly tell all autistic parents of autistic children that their child every summer is going to get worse, and we see that. I've seen it for the last almost 30 years. In the summertime, all of these children's symptoms get so much worse because they are exposed to insecticides being sprayed in the air along the highways, in stores. And I would tell people, I doubt the average person knows that without their permission, they're being sprayed, their body, with insecticides. You go into a grocery store, the glass doors slide open, look up, you'll see a little white box, maybe it's black in some stores, that is misting insecticides on you so that insects won't fly into the door. I think I'd rather live with an insect, a fly coming in, than being poisoned with insecticides. But they do it throughout these stores now, everywhere. I was in another state the other day, and not only was it in the grocery stores, it was in clothing stores, it was in malls, it was everywhere I went. I could smell the insecticide in the air. It's a very faint smell, but it's there.
I was in the truck with one of our instructors, Mike Parsons. This was a while back, and we were visiting a farm, and his farmer was showing his farm, and it was manicured. It was kind of like a golf course, and so we were riding all over these beautiful grass fields, about 300 acres or so, and his fences were just magnificent. There weren't any weeds, and I thought, wow, this is miles of fence. What a lot of work this is. So I asked him about his fence, his barbed wire fence, and why, there are no weeds on it. Obviously, he was spraying them, but I wanted him to tell me about that. And he said that he sprayed them with Roundup. And I asked him, how does he do that? He said, well, he just gets on the four-wheeler and he puts a spray tank on the back, a big spray tank, maybe 15 gallons or so, and just rides along the fence line and just sprays and sprays. And I said, well, doesn't that get on you? And don't you breathe that? And he goes, yeah, well, yeah. He's dead. This man is dead. This man is dead.
I actually saw that yesterday, Vincent. I saw an older gentleman. He had a cane. He obviously couldn't walk. He was on a four-wheel, and he was going along his fence line, spraying it as I was driving down the highway. And I thought, well, I see what some of your health problems might be, where they might be coming from. So that is so common. I don't really think people realize it. I, live in the South, and I live in a ritzy subdivision, and even the walking paths are sprayed, and I know that my puppy ended up in the hospital. He almost died because they had sprayed Roundup. They put no signs up, and he walked all over the path where they'd been sprayed and developed severe pancreatitis. He almost died, and the vet had said it was an insecticide exposure from that. So this is what people unknowingly are being exposed to. No one puts out signs that they just sprayed everywhere you're walking with an insecticide, or that every time you go into a restaurant now or a grocery store, you're going to be spritzed with an insecticide. No wonder the cancer rates are rampant in areas. It's just terrible what's being done with this spraying everywhere.
Yeah, and then, of course, we're spraying the fields as well.
Yes, of course, and
not
lawns.
we are, but I've been cautioned not to use the word we when I'm talking about people in general. So they are spraying fields. I don't spray our
clover?
fields.
I think clover's beautiful. Why do people want this artificial green lawn? I love clover. I don't see anything wrong with dandelions. I think they're pretty. So I don't see a problem with what God gave us. Why are we trying to destroy everything to make something look so artificially green? It's ridiculous.
Our family eats dandelions in salad and on sandwiches, and my mother's been doing it for as long as I've known my mother. She's been eating dandelions, going out into the yard and picking them and washing them and putting them in salads and sandwiches, and absolutely. And my mom's pretty darn healthy. She's in her 90s, and she gets around just fine.
Well, I think you can see the damage. I mean, if anyone wants to do research, they can. I know a study that was done that really opened my eyes, and they took children in a school, and they let them draw a picture of a little boy and a dog. Each picture, you could tell it was a little boy and a dog, and then they treated the school for insecticides, and then they went back with the children and had them draw the same picture. You literally could not tell what it was. Their little brains were so scrambled from that insecticide. So that, to me, is just an obvious picture of what is happening with these children and with other adults that are being exposed to it.
Our
I
daughter
definitely don't want to be exposed.
Our daughter's around 30 years old, and she works at an educational institution, a university. And she sent me a picture of her face, and her eyes were literally swollen shut. She went to work, and her eyes were swollen shut. And I said that I believe she had an allergic reaction to an insecticide spray over the weekend. And, maybe she put her arms on her desk, her hand on her desk, and maybe her eye was itchy, and she rubbed her eyes, and boom, literally swollen shut. Now, that was, within the last few months. Then, thinking back, as you say this, about school children, before we took all of our children out of the public training camp, I think she was in 4th grade maybe, and the nurse called, and we picked her up because she had this rash all over her body on a Monday. And what we tracked this down to was over the weekend, the maintenance people let off these aerial bug bombs in the classrooms to kill little critters like head lice that were and fleas that were in the classroom. So they bombed the classrooms in the school, and then these insecticides landed on the desks and everything. They landed everywhere, and these children were touching their desks, their chairs, their whatever they had, their books, and our daughter was poisoned with this insecticide. Now, did the school tell anybody they did this? No. And so we realized that in these public places, it's kind of a dangerous environment. And you said it all when you talked about, getting your dose of insecticide going into a supermarket or a grocery store. And then I did a little research.
And, Vincent, speaking of the school system, you are so correct. I cannot tell you after a summer break or after a long holiday period, the parents that bring their children into me that have all of a sudden gotten so much worse. And then when I have the parents call the school, 100% of the time, the school has sprayed while they've been out on a vacation or over a summer, or they've just done it before the children came back. Over and over we hear that story, but are parents notified? No. Are they told? No. And I'm just, a parent called me the other day and she said, "Oh, I'm so shocked. I did not realize that every hotel and every airplanes are notorious for being sprayed for insecticides." I spoke to a young pilot, and that pilot told me, he said, if the public knew how many insecticides are sprayed on that plane, they probably wouldn't get on it. Can you imagine that?
Yep, and it's in the air.
You're irritated and wiped out when you get off the plane.
Right, and it's in the air handling systems, the heating and the cooling systems, and not only that, I've seen a video recently within the last several weeks of a stewardess on an airplane walking backwards, starting in the back of the aircraft, commercial aircraft, walking backwards toward the front of the plane, spraying an aerosol spray. And I'm sure it wasn't air freshener, which is probably dangerous as well. But this was an insecticide. They were spraying so that everybody got to breathe it, and got all over everybody, so that on these international flights, I guess we don't bring bugs from country to country. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us, and we're going to come right back. We got a lot to talk about, including what do you do about these little pesky bugs, fleas, and ticks, and so forth that may get on you when you travel the fields, and it happens to me on a regular basis because I'm a farmer. Then we'll talk about electromagnetic illness, ham radio, and just who is Dr. Millie Hinkle, and more. Class, Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us. CamelMilkUSA.com, the website. Dr. Hinkle, you mentioned a toxic environment in West Virginia, and it reminded me of a post I read, and I pulled it up, and it's for NationalGeographic.com. It says a large-scale chemical spill on the Elk River. I was talking about this person near her home in Charleston, West Virginia, had unleashed an unknown amount of a coal washing agent, possibly poisoning the local water supply. And so it says, continues, for weeks, nearly 300,000 people for weeks around Charleston, West Virginia, the state capital, were told not to drink or bathe in the local tap water. Now, this is around the state capital. The reason I'm mentioning this is, we would think that there are places that might be safer than others, like Washington, D.C. They certainly wouldn't poison themselves. The state capitals of the states around the Union wouldn't poison themselves. But here it's happened in West Virginia. And I've driven many, many, many times on journeys between Virginia and Missouri past Charleston. And there are these awful smells in the air, even late at night. There's obviously something going on there because the smell is horrible. So I'm concerned about that as well. And doesn't it seem that we pick on the poor people, the little people? They're the ones that get to work in these environments with these chemicals and poison themselves at their jobs. Doesn't it seem common?
It does, and it's sad. It's sad where there's West Virginia is a fabulous state with lovely, lovely people. I love West Virginia, and I know that they need jobs there. My husband was president of the West Virginia Roundtable at one time, so I know that the jobs are needed, but I think that companies like insecticide companies and big chemical companies come in and take advantage of that. That's happening all over the world. It's happening in Africa. The same thing is happening in Africa now, of these companies, international companies coming in and just little or no regard for people's health. And I find it sad. Mm-hmm. And almost criminal, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. Sure. What about some natural method of deterrent for fleas and ticks and other critters that get on our body that kind of drive us crazy, and our dogs? Do you have a thought for a way to prevent some of that?
Well, there obviously are plant substances like cedar oil, eucalyptus, lavender oil, some things like that insects don't like, specific types of insects. And it's very easy to just go on the internet and research insects and what actual plant or plant oil might be effective. I had a very interesting story in the camel industry a couple of years back. One of the members of the royal family, Prince Khalid Faisal, contacted me from Saudi Arabia, said that he has his Bedouin tribe of people that he's responsible for, and they have many, many camels, and they do not want the milk contaminated with an insecticide, but he had serious tick and flea problem, and he wanted to know if I could help him with that. And I actually contacted several companies here in the U.S., and Cedarside was one of those, and we got a and tick dip developed with just the cedar oil, and they would dilute it in water. And he said it was amazing that it had totally, completely eradicated all the problems with the fleas and ticks with the camel, and absolutely no effect on the milk or the milk production. So, that's an example of a natural, and I know that I've been contacted by several other of the big family owned by royal family dairies wanting to do the same.
And you may not know this, Dr. Hinkle, but Matthew Jones is the CEO of Cedarside.com, and he's a USA preparedness instructor. He's been on the air with us many times, and we use Cedarside on our dogs, and I spray it on my blue jeans when I go out and I'm in an environment that has fleas and ticks to prevent those critters from attacking me, and it works. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements, and I've got so many more questions. We'll start about the electromagnetic illness. Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. And John is engineering the broadcast at Genesis Communications Network in Minnesota. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us. And we've been talking about chemicals, toxins, poisons, and how dangerous they are. And we're going to continue that for the next hour, as well as electromagnetic radiation. But first, I'd like to just share with our class very, very quickly that there's a post on the website, USA Prepares, about the dirty dozen, the most heavily sprayed foods. And they are peaches, apples, strawberries, grapes, especially the imported varieties, cherries, nectarines, pears, red raspberries, sweet bell peppers, celery, spinach and lettuce, potatoes, tomatoes, and meat. Meat has, the animals have been fed in many cases with pesticide-rich grains, and milk contains innumerable pesticides, antibiotics, and hormones. Dr. Hinkle, any comments before we continue?
I think we've covered a lot that we need to cover, and it is we want people to be more careful, and we want people spraying to reduce that spraying or stop it and look for alternative, more natural things that are not so disruptive to the environment and to the human health of the population of the United States or any population of any country.
Mm-hmm. And if you'd like to do what I do and what Dr. Hinkle has recommended, you might want to call Cedarside.com, because it really works. It really works. And I just during the break I mentioned to Mrs. Finelli that it'd be a great day. It's warm to bathe our dogs and apply some Cedarside on their coats and just stop those fleas in their tracks. Dr. Hinkle, you called me a couple days ago, and you mentioned the term EMI. And, of course, I know of electromagnetic interference, EMI. But you were discussing electromagnetic illness. And this is something that is a serious concern. It is a very rapidly growing health issue around the world, not just here in the United States, but around the world. So Vincent, before we get started on this, let me go back and you triggered a thought in my brain. Another thing I'm really opposed to are these companies that come around and set up a mosquito spraying system in your yard. Not only are the people who are living there getting sprayed, but all of the neighbors are getting insecticides constantly. I went into a neighborhood recently where someone had it in their yard. 5 houses away, we could smell it. It is detrimental to people's health, and if you think it's not, you need to do some research. So let's get back. We'll finish that and get back to EMI, which is electromagnetic illness. It has been predicted or discussed that within the last 5 years, this is a very rapidly growing problem. Within the last 5 years,
over 15% of the entire population of the United States has developed a electromagnetic sensitivity. Dr. Robert Becker, people may not know of him, but he was nominated for 2 Nobel Prizes in medicine, said that the number one greatest pollutant affecting the earth today is electromagnetic fields affecting people and people's health. That's pretty serious. Those effects are the exact same, they say, as an insecticide or pesticide. They can cause nausea. They can cause Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, cancer. They disrupt or fragment DNA in the body. They cause all kinds of blood disorders, leukemia, you name it, brain cancer, tremendous amount of neurological disorders, burning of the skin, burning of the mouth, the face. People think that there is nothing to this, but we have seen in my office a tremendous amount of negative effects of this. One of these is with autistic children, and I tell parents who bring autistic children into my office, do not come into my office with one of these electro games, these little video games, because that is affecting your child very negatively. So we don't trust me. Look at some of the research done. We've done EEGs of children that we do an EEG, looks pretty normal. We put them in front of one of the little video computer type games. 20 minutes later, we do another EEG. Their brain waves are so scrambled and irregular, it would terrify a parent. So I would say you need to caution this. I have parents all the time who call me and say, my child isn't sleeping. I ask them, are you letting your child play with video games? This type thing. Yes, of course, then you need to stop it. 100% of the cases, when the parent calls back and they have totally removed that from the child, all of those symptoms go away completely. This is the kind of thing that it's doing. You know, you talk to people who work with computers. They say, oh, my hands swell. Yes, it affects the fluid in the cells. It's just one of the small things it does. So I would say that this is a big growing issue. In Europe and in Canada, they are well aware of it. In fact, politicians in Europe have demanded that something be done about it and that precaution be taken. And there's so many ill people in Canada and Europe, it takes a year to even get an appointment to get in with a doctor who specializes in this. That's how prevalent it is there. And it's growing rapidly here. And now with all the new technology that's coming on board and all the new things that are being allowed by the government, I will tell you that we're going to see this increase because 15% of the population in only 5 years. What's going to happen 5 years from now? Is it going to be 30, 50? And then what are we going to do? Kill ourselves. Destroy our health.
Dr. Hinkle, back in the 1960s, I was very interested in electronics. And I saved my money and I bought a volt-ohm-meter. And it had a very sensitive scale, a millivolt scale. And what I did was I took a piece of wire and, maybe 75 to 125 feet long, and I strung it between two insulators, two porcelain insulators. And I drove a rod into the ground.
You grounded yourself,
and
yes.
I did not. Well, here's what I did. I attached one end of the milliamp meter to the antenna wire, and the other lead, the negative lead, to the ground rod that I drove into soft soil, several feet long. And I literally could measure electric fields in the air with a voltmeter, a millivoltmeter. So back in the 1960s,
you can definitely do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely no question about it. And of course, many of us know that you take a fluorescent light bulb and you hold it parallel up over your head under high tension power lines, and you'll see it light up. Okay, I'm talking about a fluorescent light bulb, 4 feet long, 8 feet long. And so we know that there are electromagnetic fields. And if you want an easier way to determine that class, all you have to do is turn on your radio, and you can traverse the AM band with your tuning dial, and you can listen to station after station after station, or FM, And you would not be able to do that if there weren't those electromagnetic signals in the air. So you've got that, plus you've got television signals, plus you've got satellite signals coming down. You've got Wi-Fi, cell phones. You've got the municipal band radios, and you've got probably one of your favorites, ham radio. You've got all of this going on simultaneously. Then you add to that the power lines that are running up and down most roads in the country and across farms and pastures and fields and over neighborhoods and schools, and especially over schools. It seems like what happens with school systems is they say, where's the biggest, baddest power line system we've got? That's where we want to build our school.
That's so sad and true.
And just cook them.
There's been study after study done where there have been cell phone towers put on school grounds, and the cancer rate has just skyrocketed in children where these towers have been. I know that two stories relating to me. I just sold my home this week. I'm going to be closing on it in about 6 more weeks, and I've had to move. I had a green home. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars making my home green. Had someone who specializes, works with the Pentagon, works with NASA, come into my home to make sure there was no electromagnetic sensitivity, and the subdivision I live in allowed an 83-year-old man to put a ham radio operation right beside me. Since it's been in, I can't hear anything on my phone. My phone is ringing 40, 50 times in a 30, 40-minute period. We pick it up, there's nothing but ringing and static in the background. Nothing has been done. My health immediately started, my skin started burning, my heart started racing. I wasn't even aware what was going on. And then I realized when I'm not in my home, it goes away. So that's one thing. The house before that, my neighbor put in a high-powered cell tower, and I was on 25 acres, and that did not protect me because he put it on the property line. And when we would turn on our television, we did not hear the people talking on the TV. We literally heard people speaking on cell phones on our TV. So we had AT&T and Sprint come up from Atlanta, wherever they were, and they came into my home. They documented, and they said, yes, this is our fault, this is us, but so what? You don't have enough money to take us to court to sue. You'll never win. So I'd sold the home. So this is the kind of stuff we're dealing with in today's world. I realize there are people that have ham operations, ham radio operators. I know they love their hobby, and but my thing is I think they should be on land not adjacent in a subdivision. I really don't think that that's healthy for other members of that, because the studies do show a rise in thyroid problems, thyroid cancer, all types of cancer, autoimmune disorders, on and on. The list is quite extensive.
I've got a couple comments about ham radio when we come back. I just add another exclamation point to what you just said. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us. CamelMilkUSA.com. We'll be right back. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us. CamelMilkUSA.com is the website, and her contact information is there. There's a link at usaprepares.com under instructors if you'd like to find her that way as well. Dr. Hinkle, when I was growing up back in the 1960s and 70s, to be specific, we had a neighbor who was a ham radio operator, and those were the days of tube-powered ham rigs. And he built this great big antenna in his backyard, and it was a directional antenna, and he could, with his automatic rotor, turn that into any direction that he wanted, north, south, east, west, or anywhere in between. And he would talk around the world, and this was a pretty high-powered rig. And I remember watching black and white television, over-the-air television, and that when he keyed that microphone, it would just twist that image, and all you'd hear is garbled ham radio speak, and it would totally obliterate the signal from the high-powered television stations. And the point I want to make is he was a wonderful, wonderful man, taught me a little bit about electronics, and he died around 57 years old. And I don't think that it was because he was doing, involved in the chemical industry. I think it was related to the electromagnetic radiation. And there are posts, I did a quick search during the break about posts of electromagnetic illness, and there's plenty of posts saying that this is absolutely nonsense. Meaning,
of course,
a lot of posts saying that anybody who thinks this is real is nuts. However, the Washington Post says that there are people who tend to experience some combination of physical symptoms like nausea, headache, palpitations, fatigue, rashes, dermatological problems, often simultaneously, and also confusion, memory loss, and the like. And I can tell you for sure that when I was working with computers that were of slow processor speed, less than 800 megahertz back in the 90s, that when I worked on them, I was fine. But when they got up to 800 megahertz or a gigahertz and I had the cases open, I would become very confused, unable to work on them unless I wrote down exactly what I was doing on each computer, because I used to be able to remember that, and I had memory confusion. And when I put the metal chassis back over these computers to cover up the motherboards, the way a computer would be used, in the office or on, in somebody's home, covered with the screws in the back of the case and all that, I was fine, but not with the cases open at 800 megahertz and higher. So what I'm saying is I absolutely positively believe that it's real. I believe that I can feel radar guns when these blue plague are behind me, blasting everybody with their radar guns, just aiming them willy-nilly at anyone they feel like aiming them at. I want to wear a military World War II metal helmet when I drive down the road or travel down the road, and I want one of these things on the seat next to me so that when I have one of these cops blasting me, I can put this helmet on. I'm serious. I'm not kidding.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that I don't think governments such as Great Britain or Sweden would be addressing this as a serious health problem if it were not. It's the same thing as the pesticides, insecticides. Those countries recognize the dangers of those things and take action. The United States just barrels ahead. They don't care because it's who's controlling what in Washington. That being said, let's talk more about EMF, electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic illness. I went to a very interesting place recently called Green Bank, West Virginia. There is a satellite there, so it's a big, spy satellite. So they do not allow for 13,000 square miles around that satellite. They do not allow computers, cell phones, high electromagnetic, high-powered anything. You can literally feel, without even knowing you're within that range, the difference when you go into it. Your heart rate drops. Your brain clears. It's amazing. That is the safest place in the United States for anyone to get away from electromagnetic fields. It is so well known that I understand from residents there that people are coming from all over the world buying property there to protect themselves because they think that the future is so dire that this is the only way to protect themselves to get in a place like this. So we'll see.
Talk a little bit more about this location when we come back, and I'll share with you some of the things that we've done here at our farmhouse to minimize the impact of electromagnetic radiation hitting us. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us, CamelMilkUSA.com. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us, and we're talking about electromagnetic illnesses. Dr. Hinkle, here's what I did. We built our farmhouse about 11 years ago. And because I did all the wiring, I knew exactly where all the wires were. And I bought some copper dust on the internet. And this copper dust is about the consistency of flour, ground flour. And I mixed it with the primer, and I painted the wallboard where these wires are, easily a foot wider in both directions of where the wires would run horizontally and vertically to reflect inward to the walls the electromagnetic radiation that would be coming out. So, if there was a wall between two rooms, they got painted on both sides. Light switches and those kind of areas were all painted. And when I tested the electromagnetic radiation coming out of the circuit panels, I used a tri-field meter, something that Dr. Norman Shealy, medical doctor, has one. He recommended that I get one, and the CEO of the company that manufactures them is one of our instructors. So I tested the electromagnetic radiation coming out of these circuit panels, the circuit breaker panels, and I got to tell you that most of the electromagnetic radiation that is emitted in a home from the wiring perspective is coming out of this circuit breaker panels and all around it. So when you think about a circuit breaker panel, they're generally they're in rooms where people stay. Sometimes they're in bedrooms, and sometimes they're between walls in the house. So there's electromagnetic radiation that comes out where the panel side access is, and it comes out the back as well. So you may want to find an instrument to detect that, and you may want to take the same kind of precautions that I did and get some copper dust, mix it with primer, and 5 pounds of copper dust did our whole house. So I just want to share that with you, Dr. Hinkle.
You know, those tri-meters are great. I highly recommend those. But, in my home, I actually took all the wiring and had it encased in conduit. I then actually moved the entire fuse box outside my home on a post, so it was nowhere near my home. So I did tremendous amount of work, had thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars spent, and now it's worth nothing because of this ham radio operation next to my home. So anyone's got any property for rent, let me know. I'm looking for a new home. That being said, let me go back a little bit to the medical aspect of this, Vincent. A lot of the people 100%, I guess, of the people that come into my office, we always test them for heavy metals, and we do find, and the studies do show that the most sensitive people to electromagnetic radiation are people that have elevated levels of one or more heavy metals and pesticide, insecticide exposure. So here we go back to the pesticides, insecticides, and heavy metals. That has been shown to be true in all the patients that have come into my office, and when we do get those levels down, they're able to tolerate more, but they don't want to live in an environment where they know they're being inundated with all this electromagnetic fields. When I was up in Green Bank, West Virginia, every person that I spoke to there, which I was amazed, was a PhD or a medical doctor who'd become ill and had moved there to get better. There were people literally, you could see them camping out in the woods in tents, sleeping in their cars along the highway that had come there so desperate for a place to stay to get away from it. I met a beautiful young girl who's a pilot for Delta Airlines, and she said, I'm so deathly ill, nobody at work knows it, but I have to come here every chance I get to try to get away from it because of all the electromagnetic stuff I'm exposed to on the airplane and in the airports. And also I brought up to her the fact that, well, you're exposed to insecticides as well, and she said, absolutely. So that's a very common thing, and I think it's, there again, heavy metals act as conductors for, so this type thing going on, pesticides, insecticides are loaded with heavy metals. This is the type thing we need to be on top of. The government needs to start taking action now, just like Europe is doing, and get a handle on this.
Dr. Hinkle, you mentioned being in their cars. I took the tri-field meter into our vehicles, and I got to tell you that our cars are great transmitters of electromagnetic radiation. I'm talking fantastic amounts. Pegging the needle. If you go near your dashboard with a tri-field meter, you won't believe that needle slams to the right. It seems like it's so overpowering the equipment, the electromagnetic test equipment, the tri-field meter, that you think you're going to break the meter just by going near your dashboard. So I suggest that if these people want to do this, if they're going to be in their cars in Green Bank, West Virginia, that they turn off their engines and disconnect the equipment. Right. But some cars have computers that run all the time.
Well, it's a very interesting thing. There was a study done maybe 5-10 years ago. There's such a high rate of brain cancer, prostate cancer, with police, patrolmen, people in law enforcement because of the cars. Directly was traced back to the high levels of electromagnetic radiation they are receiving from the radar and all the computers and all the high-tech stuff they have in those cars. It has been directly traced back to that. So
right.
it's another health hazard of a job.
One of the things that we've talked about on this broadcast several times with medical doctors is the reason that the police are so hyperactive, so anxious to shoot us, tase us, beat us, handcuff us, because they are their anxiety levels are so increased by the electromagnetic radiation. They're in microwave ovens. They just call them patrol cars. They're literally in these microwave ovens that are blasting them, and the electromagnetic radiation is reflected back from the roof of the metal roof, from the bottom of the car, from the metal doors. So all except for the windows, they are in a microwave oven. And the opinion is that yes, that is the case, that it's making them anxious and hyperactive and angry. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating.
Very much so. You don't really see any happy-go-lucky law enforcement officers normally, especially the ones that are in their cars all the time. And I'm sure they must be exhausted at the end of the day and irritable and a lot of other things because of that. And that's another thing. Let me throw in something here a little bit off track, but still in the same mind thought. We're seeing this with soldiers coming back from the Middle East that come into my office, and I've done a tremendous amount of work, and these guys are just doing great, but they have been disabled, so many of them. And now it's coming out that they have been exposed to extremely high levels of radiation, extremely high levels of pesticides, insecticides, petrochemicals, on top of the heavy metals with the vaccines. So these guys, all of that affects them neurologically. It affects their personalities. It affects their health, the rashes, the nausea, the insomnia, the outburst, the depression. All of the combination of these things that these guys are exposed to, I am surprised that they're even walking, quite frankly. It's a sad thing. And the government doesn't want to recognize any of this. They say, they don't have any proof that it can be any of that. But we know that it is because they have done studies that show the high levels of radiation these guys have been exposed to. And the insecticides they spray are a tremendous amount of insecticides and pesticides being sprayed where the military go, and they'll have one group of soldiers that come in and go out, and once they've gone, they'll go back and spray again and spray again and spray again. And sometimes they've oversprayed, and there is no guideline or anybody overseeing that. And if you look at the government reports, you will see that there's nobody going in and checking to make sure they're doing the right amount, the exposure, the everything that was being mixed and distributed the right way. There is no agency overseeing that in the military.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of law enforcement types come directly out of military. Let me read five short headlines. I just typed in the word cops, domestic violence on a search engine. Here are the first five. Cops beat their wives and girlfriends at double the national rate. Next, police have much bigger domestic abuse problem than the National Football League. Next, 40% of police officers' families experience domestic violence. Next, cops arrested for domestic violence. Next, police wife, the secret epidemic of domestic violence. That's just the first five. So I think there really is something to this, and I know those are just headlines, but I think it's noteworthy. Now we have had a number of people here who spent time in the service, and one time we had like 10 or 11 people show up for an expo, and they were doing seminars, and Matt Stein was here, and Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and a whole bunch of people were here. And I said, we don't have guest rooms for everybody, but we do have a guest room and we have a bunch of sofa beds. And there was this reluctance to not have each person have their own room, especially the guys. And I thought, what's this all about? What I found out was that many of them are using these CPAP machines, these constant pressure airway machines. And where the heck is that coming from? And is that related to, they're all military. Everybody that has one was in the military.
I would say probably, because there are 4 or 5 specific pathogens that a lot of these soldiers have, and they do need those type CPACs for that, high doses of antibiotics. But pathogens don't develop and grow unless there is a negative environment in their body, such as something caused by pesticides, insecticides, heavy metals, etc. Their immune system has had a major hit.
When we come back, Dr. Millie Hinkle, can we talk about Camel Milk as a major weapon against autism, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, Crohn's, Parkinson's, and food allergies? Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us. CamelMilkUSA.com is the website if you'd like to get the contact information. Dr. Hinkle, I'm looking at a post, and it's about this woman who lives in the United Kingdom, and she wants to move to the United States because she wants to go to New Mexico because she has been diagnosed with multiple chemical sensitivities. And this woman is literally sleeping with a respirator on. I'm talking about a pretty significant respirator, something that I use here at the farm when I'm doing some really serious things. I want to filter out these micro particles. I'm not talking about just a little mask. I'm talking about a serious respirator. So she's in a wheelchair. I mean, she looks like she's 80 years old and she's in her 30s. So these things are absolutely real. I just wanted to share that with you. Have you heard of that as well? Those kinds of illnesses?
Absolutely.
I mean, that serious?
That was the majority of the patients for so many years in my practice were patients and still are with environmental issues and multiple chemical sensitivity. There are communities that have been built. My goal is to build a green community where we can have no electromagnetic and we're looking for investors now. So if anyone is interested, please contact me. Vincent, I think you and I share this dream of having a community where people can live free of that, insecticides and pesticides and electromagnetic fields. We do see a lot of people like her. Believe it or not, they're very easy to treat once you get a handle of what they're toxic on, and 99% of the time it's going to be insecticide, a pesticide, or heavy metal that they've been exposed to, or some type of chemical. And we have to get those out. We have to work with them. We have to build up the immune system. And a lot of people, we do put on the Camel Milk because it is so high in nutrients, and it's not like a goat or cow. The antibody, in fact, is not like any that's been found in any plant or animal. It has the ability to penetrate cells and take nutrients in and push toxins out, obviously, and has the ability to cross the brain barrier, which is a big thing for many, many people. So we've seen amazing results with people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other stages of dementia and obviously autism. But a tremendous amount of the autistic children, it is in their gut because that's where a lot of the problems are to begin with. And all these things have been exposed to just grow and grow and grow till they have the symptoms that they have. And some are in milder cases and some are more severe. So we are working with those children and with other patients as well, and diabetics. Because the Camel Milk is very high in insulin. It's 52 units of insulin and about a quart of that milk. And people that are on traditional medicine for diabetes are really taking more than they would normally have to take because a tremendous amount of it is destroyed by the stomach acid. Camel Milk actually thrives in that environment, so much of it is just passed on through that stomach into the intestine where it needs to be absorbed and instantly these people are seeing amazing results. I had one of the farmers that actually has diabetes and said that his blood sugar went really high the other night, and he drank a glass of Camel Milk, and within 20 minutes it was way down, way below any dangerous levels. And so it does that. I actually have developed a yogurt and a milk for diabetics, and we're working with the university to get that patented and are looking for investors in that, and it will be the first in the world. So we're looking forward to working with people with that as well. It's an amazing milk. Some people are going to be allergic to dairy no matter what. If they have a lactase allergy, they're going to be fine. If they have an actual casein allergy, which is the protein in the milk, they may have a tendency to be allergic to Camel Milk. That would have to be tested. And some of those people do quite well on it. We have over 600 studies done with cancer, and 100% of those studies done around the world have positive results with that Camel's Milk and cancer.
Class, that's been a very fast 2 hours with Dr. Millie Hinkle, CamelMilkUSA.com. Dr. Hinkle, we're going to need to do this again and again and again. There's so many topics to talk about.
It's been a pleasure.
It has. It's been wonderful. And class, if you're interested in working with us, maybe we can build that village that Dr. Hinkle was talking about right here in Missouri. There are farms available right here, right now, very low price. Contact me if you're interested. Dr. Hinkle, thank you so much. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.